So the Braves are the best, right?
In the National League.
In the National League, right? Well, they were the best in baseball this year.
Mm-hmm.
And in a podcast we're going to drop on Thursday, we again came up with another way of looking at the Braves 2023, the greatest hitting team in Major League Baseball history.
Right, but if being the regular season champ was all that mattered, we all look a lot more favorably back on the 2001 Mariners.
Yeah, well, or even for most of the season last year, the 2022 Mets until the last 3 games.
Right, so great season from the Braves, probably even more impressive season from the Orioles, taking home best record in the American League. And I think if you're going to start with the story of the year, you do have to start with the Orioles, even though the Braves might be a more impressive team.
From a team perspective, I agree, but I think the story of the year might be the new rules in terms of the impact on the game, because we had the Braves themselves, they just missed the all-time home run record. All right, for a team.
Right. I think if you're going to talk about the new rules, the most impressive thing is attendance is up, 9%, 11%?
9%.
That's the biggest thing. Interest is back up on TV. Interest is back up in attendance. The new rules worked.
Games were shorter. People liked it.
And it was a more enjoyable viewing experience for everybody involved.
I still think that when it comes to pass, that there's going to be an idea that the end of the season saw a lot more pitchers. And we saw it this week with Felix Bautista now being out with the players with the UCL. A lot of injuries late in the season.
You can't blame Felix Bautista's injury on use because he's been hurt for a super long time.
Well, that's not use, but that the pitch clock, I think, impacted injuries. I still think that.
Right, but I think Bautista's the wrong guy to bring up because he's been missing since like halfway through the season.
It caught up to him, a month and a half ago. So
he wasn't pitching a month and a half ago.
Yeah, he was probably knocked out in July, right?
Right,
when he pretty much stopped, and then he pitched a little bit because they didn't have him have surgery. And boy, the Orioles sure could use that guy right now.
That's going to be a big loss for them.
Their chances are going to be impacted. So the obviously the teams, as we said, are the Braves in the National League. The Brewers won the Central.
The Dodgers won the West.
And the Brewers, are better than we probably think because they won comfortably. They won by 9 games over the Cubs. And I think we were talking about maybe the Brewers could lose the division.
Right,
not
and
that
then
long
the Cubs
ago.
just kind of went in the tank, and the Brewers played well down the stretch, and the Brewers took the division without much of an issue. And there's certainly a team that, is trying to say, hey, we deserve just as much respect going into this postseason as the Braves and the Dodgers do. Now, will they get that kind of respect? Remains to be seen. So
you finish the season, and let's stay in the National League, right? So the Cubs finish the season 4-6, they don't make the playoffs. The Reds finish the season 3-7, they don't make the playoffs. The Brewers go 6-4, and they win the division. And so it's pretty typical, except for the Diamondbacks, who went 4-6 in their last 10 and edged out the Padres, who won every game they could at the end of the season when it was too late.
Except for the 2 they needed, because they went 8-2, and I think they needed to go 10-0 in their last games.
So that didn't happen. And so now the Diamondbacks, and it's nice to see a team like the Diamondbacks in there because, we talked about the Pirates early in the year, the Reds. It's really fun that the Marlins.
Teams we all expected to make the playoffs in the National League did for the most part. And then you have 2 plucky, fun upstarts with the Marlins and the D-backs, who I think everybody are sort of expecting to swiftly get dispatched in the wild card.
And we'll talk about our playoff picks as well. And in the American League, you've got the Orioles, and the Twins won their division by 9 games. And that's more a question that the second-place team, which was not the Guardians, by the way, it was the Tigers.
Right, but that was a dreadful division the entire season.
The Tigers Met fans, and they finished with a better record than the Mets.
They played
before the season. There's no way I would have said that.
I was bullish on them to start the season. I thought they were going to have a season like this.
Well, wait, you're saying you predicted a 6-game under 500 season? Like, okay, what is that?
Because I thought they were going to be a team on the rise, and clearly they're a team.
That is a team on the rise for them.
Right, exactly. Clearly they're a team that you're going to be talking about as are they able to challenge for a playoff spot and maybe even the AL Central crown next season.
Well, I will say this about the Tigers and Miguel Cabrera. I don't know if you saw it. He had his final game today at home, and they had a ceremony during the game.
Him not taking at bats is going to be a benefit.
That's so much what I'm thinking too. That is definitely going to be better for the Tigers not to have. And I love Cabrera, first ballot Hall of Famer. Would you say?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, but the Tigers are going to be the better for him not being there. Mm-hmm. And then we've got the AL West. And remember in the last week's podcast when I said, there's a scenario here, right? The Astros might not make the playoffs. Not only did the Astros make the playoffs, they won the AL West, and they're the number 2 seed. I mean, where did that come from?
I mean, and if you're the Astros, you're looking at the difference because of the way the playoff seeding is broke down. You're loving where it looks for you right now if you're an Astro fan.
So the single most experienced team in the American League, I'm not sure. You could probably argue the Dodgers are as experienced as they are as when it comes to the playoffs, and the Braves right behind them.
Maybe not entirely this iteration of the Dodgers, but the Dodgers as a group are.
So, the Astros, now I've said it all along, man, I'd have a hard time betting against them. When we make our picks,
let's go into the playoff bracket. So in the AL, in the 1 seed, you have the Orioles, and in the 2 seed, you have the Astros.
They get the rest.
They get the rest. Each of them are going to be playing teams coming up to them. So then you have the 3 seed Twins playing the 6 seed Blue Jays.
And so you know how it works, right? So it's the right way, but the away team, right? The team with fewer home games plays the first game at home. So you get that game in Toronto. The Blue Jays will host on Tuesday night, and then you'll play the next 2 games on Wednesday and Thursday if necessary, right, in Minnesota, and that's it. It's over. The DS series starts on Saturday,
right? And so
this is fast.
And then you've got the same thing going on down in the 5-6 match or the 4-5 matchup with the Rays and the Rangers.
Yeah, that's a bad draw for the Rangers.
I think nobody wants to play the Rays.
Right. This is right. And
but if you're the Orioles, you're not loving the fact that you've got the
your
Rays
first pick could be against the Rays, right?
Right, and I think that's why I think the Astros are feeling so good right now because they're going to get to see. They're going to get the winner of the Twins or the Blue Jays.
And you're expecting them to win that. Yeah, I would agree.
I'm not afraid of either one of those in a 7-game series.
So Astros, Rays, American League Championships, you think the Orioles are going to lose to the Rays?
I think
in a 7-game series?
Orioles have a lot to prove to me. I think they've been the best team in the American League this year. I think they have earned their right to be in that number 1 spot and only have to win that 1 game to make the ALCS. I think they're going to have a tough time if it is the Rays with a team that's been here before, done that. It's a really young team. A lot of those guys have never played in the playoffs before. I don't even know. I think their manager has never managed in the playoffs before.
Brandon Hyde? I don't know.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be a tough task for a team that's just young and inexperienced, and I think that could catch up with them in the playoffs, and it wouldn't diminish what's been an amazing season for them.
So here's what I think about what you're saying, and that is the teams, and I agree with you, which is only in that if pitching wins championships, the best pitching teams in the American League, and I would say that the Twins and the Blue Jays are good pitching because the Rays and the Astros, and even the Orioles have suffered tremendous pitching losses. So they're going to try to patch it together with guys that maybe haven't been at the guys they expected to all year long.
The Rangers, if their pitchers get hot, if Scherzer gets hot, that team could get really tough to beat.
Would you feel comfortable as a baseball fan, having seen what Max did last year, putting Max out there in game 1 or 2 for the Rangers?
If Max Scherzer could turn the clock back 4 years and be 4 years ago Max Scherzer.
And it only takes 1 game, like the Joe Musgrove game last year, where a guy can just go in the tree.
In the 3-game series.
Right. I think that's really, really important. So flip it to the American League.
Or the National League.
The National League, I should say. And you've got the Diamondbacks and the Brewers in the 3-6 matchup.
That feels like an inevitable Brewer dispatching of the Diamondbacks.
So first game will be in Arizona, and I got to believe Zach Gallen is going to find a way to pitch that game against Brandon Woodruff or
whoever the
Corbin Burns.
Yeah, they got
there's just a lot of pitchers there. So that's probably the game for me. The Arizona Diamondbacks have to win that game if they have any chance.
Yeah, right. I think that's going to be the really hard thing for the Diamondbacks is that going to Milwaukee and having to take even a game in Milwaukee is going to be really hard with the pitchers Milwaukee has.
Now, neither of those teams can hit very much.
So that's the one thing with Milwaukee is Milwaukee could just go cold for a couple games and not score, and that could be a real big problem for them.
And the D-backs didn't back in.
No, but neither did the Brewers.
Right.
The Brewers were playing well, and they were hitting against the Cubs. So you're going to need a hell of a start from Gallen in game 1.
So, and flipping it to the Marlins and the Phillies, and I keep trying to find ways to think that plucky Marlins team has a chance to get the Phillies. I can't do it.
Right, the Marlins are the team with the worst run differential to ever make the playoffs at -53. And they're also a team that's 33-13 in 1-run games. So they've been exceptionally good in one-run games.
You're not counting on that lasting.
Right. But, and I think the problem that I have is that they're a team that is not good offensively, playing against a team with very good experience starting pitching in this postseason, and the Phillies can hit. So it's just hard for me to see the Marlins getting the pitching performance they would need in 2 different games in this series, when I think it's going to be hard for them to score at all against this Phillies team.
Without last season's Cy Young Award winner being at the top of that rotation there.
If they do somehow get by the Phillies, I don't think they have a chance in any world against the Braves.
The Marlins.
Yeah.
No, I think that everything would have to go right for the Marlins to beat the Phillies, because the Phillies throw out Nola and Zach Wheeler, and I think it's going to be very difficult, to beat those guys, in a series like this. And then I
think that the Brewers could beat the Dodgers in a playoff series.
Again, I've said this because the pitching. Look, if Corbin Burns and
Woodruff pitch well,
they go nuts, and Freddie Peralta, I think he's going to get a chance to pitch too. And they've got a bullpen led by what I think is the best closer in the game this year in Devin Williams. That's why I think the Brewers have a puncher's chance to go all the way to the World Series.
I think you have those 4 teams, and then you have the Marlins and the Diamondbacks, as we were saying, are kind of happy to be there in some ways.
And you mentioned the Marlins, having a negative run differential. The Padres had a positive run differential of 101 runs. They didn't make the playoffs.
Right, but I think that would speak to both of them.
They were the antithesis, by the way, losing the one-run games.
If I was a betting man, I would bet on the Padres being much better next season and the Marlins not being a playoff team next season.
So it is, the run differential, as much as it is, something that we can use to evaluate teams in this particular season, that's 150 run difference between the 2 teams.
Right, and so it's not, run differential doesn't necessarily tell you everything about it, but I would just say when you look at that historically, that's not a combo that bodes well for future good performance, because it's so easy for those statistics to swing back the other way next season. And all of a sudden, you're not 20 games over 500 in one-run games as the Marlins. And if you're not that, then you could be a terrible team.
So, a few items this week that happened in addition to the playoffs, and we'll make our picks at the end of this. Gabe Kapler was kicked out in San Francisco.
I think
we're out his welcome again.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Cleveland, replacing Terry Francona, who was stepping down as he's retiring.
I hadn't really thought about that. That's interesting. And I would have to think that Terry Francona is going to be involved in any kind of decision in who might go there.
I just think Kapler is a guy that would fit well with what Cleveland's trying to do.
Right, and I don't think he belongs in New York because the Mets have a managerial opening, because Buck Showalter, to my surprise, was let go today. And it's important. He didn't resign. The Mets said, we're going in a different direction.
Cohen came out and said, hey, look, when I came and hired David Stearns to be president of baseball operations, I gave him the same choice that anybody coming in should get, and that's the ability to bring his own guy. And I told him that I would be behind him every step of the way, and this is the move that he wanted to go with.
So do you think, and I don't want to spend too much time talking on the Mets here, given that
we can spare him a few minutes.
They're going to play golf tomorrow. I think, do you have any idea as to who they will pick as their manager, given their circumstances?
Everybody's going to say Craig Counsell right now, even though he's the current manager.
The manager supposed to manage Game 1 of the wild card series.
For the Brewers, right. I think he's the guy that's on there. I think you have to count Carlos Beltran as a guy that's on the list because he was simply a named guy to literally be the Mets manager.
And Mets management just likes this guy for some reason.
So I think it could be them. If it's not either one of those 2 guys, I'm really not sure who Stearns is going to go for. Maybe it's somebody from within the organization, but I'd be surprised if it was.
And there are, we won't speculate on names because there are so many that kind of come up in these conversations all the time.
Once you go past, I think to me the most obvious 2 are Counsell and Beltran. Counsell just for the Stearns connection, and Beltran because he was literally named a Mets manager at one point. Anybody else, you're going to probably have to see who the names start getting floated are.
And we've said this before on the podcast, other managers that I think are certainly at risk. I would say Ollie Marmol in St. Louis. I can't see them bringing him back.
Aaron Boone.
I think Aaron Boone's going to come back for some reason. Right. I don't think they're going to hang him.
It's either Aaron Boone or Cashman. One of them's going, I'm going to guess.
And Pedro Grifol in Chicago, where I think they said they're committed to him, which I don't really understand.
Is Houston in its transitory year next year, where they're not in Las Vegas yet, or are they?
Oakland. Next year they're in Oakland for one more season. So Mark Kotsay is the manager there. Somebody's got to manage that team, you know. Might as well let him.
Saying if they were moving, I could see them maybe replacing him and going for a new manager to be like new manager, new city kind of thing.
But those are the only two managers. So I believe there'll be more because Monday morning, right, and this comes out Monday morning, all of a sudden you get the pink slip list of the guys that are out of it.
But I think we've named most of the guys that are pretty likely.
So, and I think that, you know, this particular season.
Scott Servais.
You know, last year he was a manager of the year candidate. By the way, Buck Showalter was manager of the year last year, and he got fired the next year. You know, what have you done for me lately is what this league is about.
Right.
So Service, I think because of the way the Mariners finished the season, I think you might make a change.
Right.
It isn't even about him.
Right. It's just that this team, I think they've been eliminated 4 times in the last 10 years on game like 161 or 162.
Yeah.
That's just
the players are sick of it. Right. It's a thing.
Right. And it's unfair that you have to do this against the Astros and the Rangers and you're playing 2 other good teams. But there's lots of other divisions with lots of good teams. So you got to find a way to get over the hump at some point if they're the Mariners. And something you could look to change is leadership at the manager position with Scott Servais.
So leaders in the league, you know, we'll do our awards on our next podcast. The next Thursday we do that. But I think it's interesting. Luis Arias didn't hit 400, but he did hit 354.
Won another batting title.
He led all of baseball by a fair margin. And you know who won the American League batting title? Because is that important anymore? If you win the overall batting title, that means something, right?
I don't know who won the American League batting title.
Yeah, well, Corey Seager didn't have a good game today, so he lost out to Yandy Diaz.
Wow,
who won the batting average crown. Spencer Strider got 20 wins this year. I don't think I knew that.
And we were talking about how we might not see a
20 game winner.
One of them. He was one of the guys I thought that could do it.
Matt Olson had the major league lead in home runs. He had 54, followed by Kyle Schwarber, who hit one to edge out Pete Alonso for second place.
Ohtani led the American League, even though he basically didn't play.
He didn't play for the last month and change. Yeah, which is amazing.
He was the only guy over 40 in the American League. Interestingly,
that is correct. And Acuna had obviously the 41-73 season is the official end result.
Hell of a season.
And so I looked up the all-time stolen base for a season. Now, where does 73?
It's got to be like
stack
120 by record.
102 or so.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not even in the top 100 is 73 stolen bases. That just tells you that, you know, that's a stat that goes back far enough that you have guys that are at the top of that list like Sliding Billy Hamilton.
Oh, yeah.
Who's on there from the 1890s, who's on there like 3 or 4 times. Runs batted in, Matt Olson also led major leagues.
Matt Olson shows up a lot on the league leader list.
He won the RBI title by 21. That's a lot.
I mean, it's surprising that he's not getting any discussion for MVP.
Well, he is, but he plays on a team
with Ronald
Acuna.
So it's kind of just like, yeah, we could give it to Olson, but
yeah, you hit 54, you drove it 139, you had a nice year. Are you kidding?
Still going to go to your teammate.
Exactly. Emmanuel Clase had the major league lead in saves, and I don't even know that we consider that having the most saves to be as important anymore because I don't think he's the best reliever this year. I think Devin Williams is.
Like, it's a good for him, another good season for him, but I don't really care.
And you know the teams that are going to go on to the playoffs have these stars on the team like Ronald Acuna, and the stars play Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. The way they play in the playoffs obviously will drive their success. So who do you have making it to the National League? Let's say championship series. Let's just do the championship series.
The championship series, I think the Braves will end up beating the Phillies, who take care of the Marlins in the opening round. So it'll be the Braves.
But you give the Phillies a chance.
I give the Phillies a puncher's chance.
Yeah, I think they could do that too.
And then I think it's going to be the Dodgers beating the Brewers. And
don't we want to see Dodgers Braves?
I'd love to.
Don't we want to see that?
Do we? I don't know, but that's where we're going to end up. I think the Brewers could give the Dodgers a series, but I think the Dodgers beat them out, and I just can't see the Diamondbacks beating the Brewers.
I agree with you.
And then going over to the American League.
So yeah,
Twins, Blue Jays. Which it really feels like which sacrificial lamb am I picking there?
Yeah. I'm going to pick the Blue Jays to upset the Twins, although I don't even know if that's really an upset.
I'm going to, you know what? I'll be nice to the state of Minnesota and pick the Twins just because eventually they have to win something and not be 0-18.
But either one of them are going to lose to the Astros.
100%.
And how about the Texas Rangers and the Tampa Bay?
I'm picking the Rays to beat the Rangers to then beat the Orioles.
So Rays, Astros.
Right.
Don't we want that too?
Right.
That would be a fantastic.
Those are the 4 best teams in baseball. They've been the 4 best teams in baseball all season. I think, though, that there is totally a world where we have Orioles, Astros in the ALCS.
Yes.
Totally could happen.
And we talked about.
I don't want me not picking the Orioles to make people think like that's not a good team.
I think it's a lot though to pick the Orioles. I mean, look, the Orioles have had a great season already, considering where we thought they were going to be to start. So I don't think any Oriole fan should think they're being thrown any shade if you say, yeah, they're not going to make it to the championship series. They're going to. This is their rise up, right? They still have more to go,
right? You know, this is going to be a tough postseason.
And no, Bautista is going to kill them in the playoffs.
I'm going to be excited to watch them in the playoffs.
So and we talked about the Brewers and the Diamondbacks. We know the Dodgers are going to win the winner of that series, but who do you have winning between the Brewers and the D-backs?
Oh, the Brewers.
Yeah, and the same thing. And you think the Phillies, obviously, like I do, are going to take them out. So I think we're going to be. The weird thing is, by the time we record this next Sunday, you're going to be at Game 2 of the ALDS and the NLDS.
You're going to know where we are in the playoffs pretty deep when we.
So you can find out how wrong we were already, and it's only going to happen a week from now.